So, in a recent video of the migration of the ancient Proto-Indo-Iranians, or Aryans if you prefer, I discussed the impact of these ancient peoples on the modern people of Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, but mostly focused on South Asia, which is what people tend to think of when discussing the Aryans. They are called the Indo-Aryans after all. To recap, Iranians are more Aryan than Aryans, and Aryans are more Dravidian than Dravidians, if that makes sense. And I also touched on other migrations to the subcontinent, such as the ancient Iranian farmers, modern Europeans from the colonial era, Africans from the Indian Ocean slave trade, more recent Middle Eastern migrations, mostly from Islamic nations such as the Arabs, Persians, and Afghans, and lastly, a group from the Orient that I simply described as Eastern Eurasian, but this is a bit of an oversimplification. There have been multiple migrations and invasions of different ethno-linguistic groups from the Orient to South Asia over the past several thousand years, impacting different groups disproportionately, and despite what the US Census claims, anyone can tell you that East Asians like the Chinese and Southeast Asians like the Vietnamese are very different from South Asians, although they do share some aspects of culture. Now, keep in mind, even though the title of this video is asking how much East Asian influence is in India specifically, this video will actually be covering Eastern Eurasian, including North, East, and Southeast Asian influence on all South Asian countries, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. As I've discussed in past videos, the label of Asian outside of a geopolitical context really makes very little sense whatsoever, as tell me, what do these so-called Asian cultures have in common exactly? Either from a linguistic, genetic, or religious standpoint, most of these regions have very little to do with each other whatsoever, either in part due to the geographic divisions that have kept them isolated, such as the Himalayas between India and China, or from being descended from a more recent group of migrants, such as the Russians in Siberia. Hence, because of this extreme diversity in the Western world, the term Asian has been appropriated to mean different things, being interpreted to be East and Southeast Asians in the US and Canada, while in the UK it is more often used for those from a South or Southwest Asian background. Now, even though there's less of a gradation between East and South Asia than many other regions of Eurasia, with the Himalayan mountains creating quite the stark contrast between the two civilizations, there has been extensive contact between East, Southeast, and South Asia through alternative channels, with these ancestral components permeating large swaths of the continent, further adding to the genetic and cultural diversity already seen there. First off, however, tens of thousands of years ago, ancient southern Eurasians, a basal people who inhabited South and Southeast Asia as well as Oceania, intermixed with ancient Western and Eastern Eurasians over the course of many generations, gradually creating the gene pool and phenotype of the indigenous South Asian hunter-gatherers, also referred to as Vadoids. However, the families that created the two major modern ethno-linguistic groups of South Asia, Indo-Aryan and Dravidian, originated from the West to dominate the Indian landscape many thousands of years ago, nearly wiping out the original cultures of the indigenous peoples who preceded them. This expansion brought them into contact with many Eastern Eurasian peoples such as the Tibetans, Burmese, and Thai, although the largest relic of the Eastern Eurasian impact on South Asia is probably seen in the Munda peoples, formerly referred to as the Kolarians. Early linguists quickly realized the cultural and linguistic differences of this vast group with the other South Asians, and even the surrounding natives who already lived in Eastern India recognized them as a distinct people, and modern genetic and linguistic analysis has revealed how a people group living in East Central India could possibly be related to Southeast Asian groups like the Vietnamese or Cambodians. The Munda peoples, who include the Santhal, Ho, Karya, and Mandari, are a distinct group that speak languages belonging to the Austroasiatic family, which is hypothesized to be related to Proto-Austronesian, Thai, and Hmong peoples, originating in mainland Southeast Asia or southern China and eventually evolving to become the Vietnamese, Khmer, Mon, and many other smaller ethnic groups in the region, formerly even inhabiting as far south as peninsular Malaysia and parts of maritime Southeast Asia. It is believed that the Proto-Munda peoples migrated to East India around 4,000 to 10,000 years ago as a small group of mostly male migrants, intermixing with the South Asian hunter-gatherers or Vadoids and splintering off to create this unique people group. Alternatively, in the past, some believe that the Austroasiatic family actually originated in India before spreading to Southeast Asia, but this is a fringe view among linguists and anthropologists today, with the haplogroup analysis of course showing the reverse, with haplogroup O3 being predominant in most Munda peoples as well as most mainland Southeast Asians, despite being a tiny minority in other South Asian groups today. The later migration of various Indo-Aryan and Dravidian peoples has seen some groups intermix significantly, with many Dravidian and Indo-Aryan groups considered to be culturally and linguistically hybridized with various Munda groups. However, by and large, there was little genetic impact on the Munda peoples from later migrations of Dravidian and Aryan peoples from the west, which is why most Munda groups are around 20 to 30% Eastern Eurasian, while the rest of their ancestry belongs to the indigenous Vadoids, having very little recent Western Eurasian admixture, unlike the surrounding peoples, making them quite phenotypically distinct. Other Austroasiatic groups in South Asia include the Khasi, a group mostly in the northeast Indian state of Meghalaya, who are far closer to the original Austroasiatic migrants than the Munda, albeit with significant Tibeto-Burman influence, and additionally, this includes the various ethnic groups native to the Nicobar Islands off the coast of Sumatra, being one of the last remnants of the southernmost Austroasiatic migrants. Another more recent group to have arrived in South Asia are the Kra-Dai or Tai-Kadai peoples, related to the people of Thailand, Laos, and the Zhuang of southern China, although rather than migrating directly from Thailand, the Thai-descended peoples of India are descended directly from the Thai homeland, with the most major group being the Ahom of Assam. After the fall of the Ahom kingdom in northeast India in the 1800s, the Ahom people quickly became assimilated into the ethnic Indo-Aryan Assamese majority of the region, losing their original language and religion, which is why many in the present day actually do consider Ahom descendants to be ethnically Assamese, although there are still large differences in appearance, ancestry, and culture. There are a few other smaller Thai people groups in northeast India, having a large influence on and from the neighboring groups such as the Indo-Aryans, Munda, and Tibeto-Burmans. Speaking of which, when discussing the full-blooded or mostly full-blooded descendants of the Eastern Eurasians in South Asia, this group definitely has the largest number, albeit mostly inhabiting the fringes of the region, with a lesser degree of integration than the Thai or Austroasiatic groups. It's unknown how long exactly Sino-Tibetan peoples have inhabited northern Nepal and northeast India, but they certainly predate the Indo-Aryans by many thousands of years in these areas in particular, with it even being proposed that the Sino-Tibetan family itself might have entered China from northeast India, although it is known that the pre-Tibetan, pre-Aryan inhabitants of the Himalayas were of Eastern Eurasian stock, judging from the Kasunda, a language isolate spoken in central Nepal. The Tibeto-Burmans make up a large percentage, nearly 20% of Nepal's population, 70% of Bhutan, and in total around 35% of northeast India, although countless more Nepalis, Assamese, and Bengalis have significant influence from them. Due to intermixing between all of these previously mentioned Eastern Eurasian populations inhabiting East India, Bangladesh, and Nepal, pretty much all modern people groups living in this region have at least some admixture, some more so than others, with rates being highly variable even within the same ethnic group. For instance, the average Eastern Eurasian genetic component among Islamic Bengali speakers from the People's Republic of Bangladesh is around 15%, which may not seem too high, but I've seen examples of Bangladeshis that are as low as 5% or even as high as 50%. So to average out each individual ethnic group does simplify the situation a bit, but it is a good way to show the gradation between ethnic groups rather than within. The Indo-Aryan ethnic group with the highest percentage of Eastern Eurasian ancestry on average would be the Tharu, a people centered in the Himalayas in the vicinity of the Nepalis, and their very strong Tibetan sway is evidenced not only in their appearance, but also their language, culture, and lifestyle. Even though the Mongols never managed to conquer the Indian subcontinent, the final and most minor East Asian component to have entered South Asia would be the conquest of the Mughals, a Turco-Mongol-Persian group originating from the Iranian plateau around modern Afghanistan, and hence would have probably resembled the Pashtuns more than the Turkic Central Asians living north of them, such as the Kazakhs. However, the original Mughals would have had some degree of East Asian influence in both their genetics and culture. Mughal is actually a derivative of the word Mongol, with many claiming direct ancestry from Temujin or Genghis himself. And fun fact, in an attempt to harken back to their roots as descendants of the Mongol conquerors, the surname Khan was widely used by many in the Islamic South Asian nobility, eventually becoming widespread throughout the entire subcontinent, despite most adopting the name having very little ancestry from the Mughals, let alone the Mongols at all. By doing a genetic breakdown of nearly all groups in the northeast section of the Indian subcontinent, a region which includes Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and northeast India, we can see the various levels of Eastern Eurasian admixture in various people groups today, although keep in mind that these are averages, as mentioned earlier. Doing an approximation of different genetic sources for the various ethno-linguistic groups is a bit spotty, since many supposed Tibeto-Burman groups like the Bamar only share a moderate degree of ancestry with the Tibetans, and likewise the ethnic groups of Thailand retain their original genetic base even after the conquest by the Tai-Kadai peoples. However, we can see the major diversity in ancestry for these various Northeast South Asians, and in fact, pretty much the only major ethno-linguistic group in Southeast Asia that isn't represented in South Asia would be the Hmong Mien, as even the Austronesians have a minor presence in Sri Lanka through the migration of peoples from the Malay archipelago. All of this adds to the extreme phenotypic, linguistic, and cultural diversity of one of my favorite regions of the world to learn about. So go ahead and let me know your thoughts on the impact of Southeast, East, and even Northeast Asians on the peoples of India, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and the rest of South Asia. And for today's poll, let me know which Eastern Eurasian group in South Asia you think is the most interesting. And as always, this has been Mason. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.